Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Cook with OC program today. Before we begin today's webinar, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices, located in Toronto, are on, is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Welcome, and my name is Tracie Napoli, Director of Fund Development and MARCOM at Osteoporosis Canada, and I will be your host for today. We want to thank Thinkbeef.ca for their partnership with this cook-along cooking demo webinar. This webinar will provide general information about cooking and food knowledge. It's not intended as individualized health or nutrition advice, but if you have a question about nutrition, consult a physician or registered dietitian. Now, in addition to those of you who are watching the cooking demo from home, we are also doing a cook-along with participants from across the Greater Toronto area, and they're going to be cooking along with Emily today. But if you have a question, we want to hear from you. You can click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and enter it there, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar within the time available. One key component to optimize our bone health and reduce our risks for osteoporosis is by focusing on nutrition and making food choices containing the bone-building nutrients needed to keep bones strong and healthy. There are 5 essential nutrients for bone health. Calcium, which is one of the key minerals that supports new bone formation and helps maintain strong bones. Vitamin D, it ensures our bodies can absorb enough calcium to keep bones strong and supports muscle function. Protein is necessary to build and repair bone tissue and helps keep muscles strong. Magnesium helps our body use vitamin D, which is important for calcium absorption, and vitamin K activates a protein that helps build our bone and bind minerals such as calcium to the bone structure. Osteoporosis Canada recommends that whenever possible to get bone-building nutrients through food sources. So let's talk about protein. Including protein in your diet to benefit muscle and bone health at every meal is important. And some examples are beef, eggs, fish, poultry, pork, tofu, legumes, nuts, milk, yogurt, and cheese. And one of the main ingredients in today's featured recipe is beef. Beef has many essential nutrients packed into each small serving and provides nutrients that are difficult to get from other foods like iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. Make sure to eat a variety of foods, including fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and foods that contain calcium like yogurt, cheese, collard greens, canned salmon with the bones, and almonds. So let's get started. Today's featured recipe is Stovetop Beef Curry with 40 grams of protein and 250 milligrams of calcium per serving. You can find today's recipe along with others by visiting osteoporosis.ca/recipes. I will also put the link in the chat. It's now my pleasure to welcome Emily Richards, a professional home economist, freelance food writer, chef, and the author and co-author of 11 cookbooks. Emily also writes and develops recipes for print and online publications that include everyday cooking and healthy eating, and she can be found on TV, radio, and webcasts just like this one. Please welcome Emily.
Hey, Tracie. Thank you so much, and welcome to all our cook-along friends tonight. This is so exciting, Tracie, to have all these people in my kitchen.
I know, Roy, and we've got Roy, who you can't see. He's our tech behind the scenes. Roy, let's do a big gallery shot. That way we can say hi to everyone. Roy loves it when I put him on the spot to do things. So
it's because you and I aren't tech savvy like
I know,
that, so
exactly.
it's good that
and that's okay. We can see some of you there. So we're so excited to have you all there. And Emily's got someone who's visiting with her. Now, before we get started, and we're so excited to have so many of you watching with us today, we're going to do the Stovetop Beef Curry recipe. And you can see all of our cook-along participants, they all got a lovely purple unbreakable apron, just like Emily is wearing. And we're going to draw a winner from those who are watching the cooking demo. And unlike the last one, I won't forget to announce the winner at the end. So Emily's going to make sure that I do that. So you have to just stay on. I'll draw a name and we'll do that at the end of this. But you know what? I know everyone is dying to get started. So Emily, let's take it away.
Perfect, we will. And the accompaniment I have is from Lincoln, my little Yorkie. You will not see him, but you may hear him. He's excited because you know what? He's a fan of beef curry, as am I. So this is exciting. We have our cook-along friends cooking with us tonight. So they have all the ingredients that I have, and we're going to be working through the recipe together. So the first thing I always do is I have a copy of the recipe in front of me because, you know, I get distracted and I sometimes talk too much and I need the recipe in front of me. So this is always a great thing to have handy, whether it's on your phone or on your computer or a printout, so that you kind of have everything and you know that you have all the ingredients, because that's kind of a big thing. So what's exciting about this recipe is the fact that it's a lot of pantry staples. Now, if you're thinking, you know, I haven't made curry before, so I might not have all the ingredients, there's a couple things that you can do. It's mainly the spice mixture, because curry has all those beautiful spices in it. And we're going to kind of create our own little mix of curry with whole spices and some ground. But if you can't find them at the grocery store, and you might not want to buy a large container of it because maybe you're experimenting, you can always go to a bulk store and pick up a little bit of these spices, whole and ground, and then kind of go from there. And then I think you're going to love it. And then you're going to just want to make it again, which is fabulous. So we are going to start off with our vegetables. So one of the things that I love doing together when I'm cooking, either in person or online, is to kind of talk a little bit about kitchen and food safety. So have your hands clean, our vegetables washed, and we're going to get started with our vegetables first, and we're going to leave our protein, which is that wonderful beef that we're using tonight, to the end, so that then cleanup is a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. And as we go through this, whether it's my cook-along friends or anyone that's watching, please feel free to ask us questions as we go through, or just put it in the chat or the Q&A, and Tracie will kind of get to them and we can talk through them. Substitutions we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about lots of great things. So I'm excited because the aroma that's going to emanate in the kitchen, I wish it could go through the screen, but sadly, you'll have to make it at home to get that wonderful aroma. All right, so we're going to start off with our vegetables, and I thought we'd start off with kind of the big things first, so the onion and the tomato. So what I like to do is just have kind of a prep plate. If you've seen cooking demos, whether on television or online, you see that they have all these beautiful bowls and plates and things, and for good reason. There is reason to have that mise en place done, because it actually makes the cooking of the recipe happen a little bit quicker. So we're kind of going to take the time to do that so that the recipe can come together. So I'm just using a plate, and that's where I'm going to put all my veggies. So we're going to start off with our onion. So the recipe calls for a red onion. Let's say you don't have a red onion, you have just a yellow cooking onion, you have a sweet onion, you have a Spanish onion. You can use whatever onion you have. One of the reasons I liked using the red onion is because it has a little bit of color and it's a little bit more of a milder onion. So if you have a sweet onion or a Spanish onion, that will work beautifully. If you only have a cooking onion, that's okay too. Now, let's say you're not a fan of a lot of onion, because a lot of these onions are quite large. You could use half the onion, quarter of the onion, you could use a small onion. But we really just want to get that flavor started. So the onion will really add a nice addition. So it rolls around, we need to do a little bit of cutting here, and we obviously want to be safe with it. So what I'm going to do is just cut off the stem end here so that I have a flat start, so that this onion is not going to go anywhere. And you can save all your bits for the compost, okay? Or if you have a stockpile, and by that I mean vegetables that you're going to make stock with, the skins and trimmings of the onions are a great thing to add to that, okay? So once I have that flat surface, I'm going to cut my onion in half, okay? So let's say you only want to use half the onion, you can set that half aside, but I am going to use the whole onion. And I'm just going to peel that outer layer, that kind of papery skin on the outside off. Okay. And if you find that that first layer is a little bit soft, you can take off the first layer of the onion as well. But I want to keep this root end intact because that's actually holding the onion together for me. And that's what I want. So I'm going to peel both halves here. Okay. That. Okay. Maybe not as easy as I think. Just use my knife to help me along. There we go. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to chop this onion. I better make sure we are going to chop this onion. No, we're thinly slicing it. See, it's always good to have that recipe nearby so that I can check. Also, if I'm doing something wrong, let me know because, you know, I could have chopped this onion. And you know what? That's okay. If I would have chopped the onion, it still would have tasted delicious. So because we're slicing it, this root end that I told you to keep on, we're going to cut it off. Okay. So I'm just going to trim that off because I want nice thin slices and I like to have those slices go lengthwise. So when I say lengthwise, that means I'm going to get long strips of onion, not half moons. If you've already gone ahead to slice your onion and you have half moons, that's okay. They're still going to cook just as perfectly. So I'm going to cut both root ends off and get that last little bit of papery skin off. And then I'm just going to hold on tight and just do nice thin slices of my onion. Okay. And you can see that beautiful purple. I guess we should call them purple onions, not red onions, but there we go. Nice. And I just flipped over that onion so it was a little bit easier to slice through. And then I'm going to take that onion and just put it on that plate, my prep plate. And then I'm going to cut the other half. So the idea is that we always kind of have a nice clean work surface so that nothing kind of piles up. If you have one cutting board and you want to try to cut everything on that same cutting board, it can get a little bit too much if you leave it on there. So it's good to set it aside. So I kind of cut half and then I just flip it over and keep slicing away. Okay. Now, if you feel like you haven't sliced your onion super, super thin, that's okay. That just means it'll take a little bit of extra time cooking. So what I love about cooking is that we give everybody kind of estimates of time. So it might say 5 minutes. But if you've sliced your onion a little bit thicker, it might actually take a little bit more time. So these are all things that just keep in mind as you're going through and keeping track of all the size of slicing and dicing. All right, so next what we'll do is our garlic. So we need 3 cloves of garlic, and garlic comes in many sizes, cloves in particular. So if you're a huge garlic lover, use 3 big juicy cloves. If you like to stay away from garlic, maybe just use 2 or 3 smaller ones. I have really good sized cloves, and I'm not a fan of shying away from garlic. So I am going to use 3 good sized cloves. And again, we're going to kind of do the same process that we did with the onion with the garlic. So I'm going to just hit it off with the side of my knife a little bit to break that papery skin off and then just peel it off. Now, if you're not a fan of chopping garlic, you could use a garlic press here if you wanted. You could use a rasp and just grate the garlic. And if you want a mild aroma of garlic, you could just thinly slice the garlic in this recipe, okay? So that it just gives it a more soft flavor of garlic. In our case, I want that garlic to kind of come through. So we are going to mince it. Just make sure that I get all that papery skin off, okay? If some of it's in there, it's not the end of the world, but I like to just kind of get it as best I can. Now, this time, I do want to leave that root end on. So that's kind of that hard end bit of the clove, this part right here, okay? We want to leave that on because we're kind of going to use that, again, to hold our garlic clove together, but also to hold on to as we mince it. So this is going to be the close-up shot of the garlic. So I have it between my fingers. I'm going to make lengthwise cuts through the garlic, almost to the end, but not quite, okay? And then I'm going to flip it over and do another, let's say 2 lengthwise cuts, like that. And then I'm going to do a nice chopping motion. And I'm going to stay nice and close so that as I'm going through the garlic, I'm getting small little pieces of minced garlic. Okay? Now, if you want it a little bit finer, you can just go back and chop up and down a little bit more to get that nice minced garlic, okay? So I'm gonna move that, and I'm gonna do this 2 more times. You could do it all at the same time if you want, but what this does is, you'll notice that as I'm mincing it, I'm not losing a lot of juice out of the garlic. So if I were to smash this, a lot of the juice would have ended up on my cutting board and not in the garlic. And I really want that flavor in our curry tonight, okay? So then again, just up and down. The closer these cuts are, the smaller the garlic will be. And then that little bit of end of the garlic that I'm holding on to is the part that you're just going to set aside. And then I'm going to go back and mince a little bit more, okay? So if you can get all this kind of mise en place done ahead of time, when you actually go to cook it, it really does come together quickly. So this is meant to be a nice kind of weeknight meal that comes together. And of course, your prep time will be a little bit shorter if you're not necessarily listening to me as we're cooking together. All right, so here's my last clove of garlic, just like that, and into my mise en place plate over here, okay? There. Now, if you're wondering, because oftentimes I get questions about, okay, thanks, Emily, I just minced all that garlic. Now my hands are sticky, my knife smells, my fingers smell. What am I supposed to do? Go to the sink, just turn on your cool water, and have the blade facing away from you, and then just rub your fingers along the blade, okay? And that'll help remove the stickiness. It'll also clean your knife. And then it'll also take away some of that lovely aroma of garlic. Okay, and then I'm just going to give my knife a little wipe, and then we're back to work. Okay. Any questions so far? Everyone's doing okay? My cook along friends, if you want, you can always just give me a thumbs up and let me know that things are, all good in your kitchen. Some of you I know have already gone ahead and done some work, and that's totally cool.
I was going to say I did a bunch of mise en place because I thought it was going to be better. So can I even show you there?
Yeah, that's awesome. Look, mise en place right
Anita's
there.
got it all done already. That's
beautiful.
Great.
I just thought it was going to be what I had to do to get going so I could go along with you. Anyway, I just presume you're going to be cooking a lot faster than me, so here I am.
No, that's perfect. I love it. And this is a great example because now you can you're
I can
totally
focus
relaxed.
on what you're doing.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and this is really what mise en place is about too, right? Because if you have it already, you can focus on the cooking element. So you can get everything done and then cook and then enjoy. So it's a little bit more relaxed. The one thing I didn't mention.
A glass of wine.
Oh, and a glass of wine. That's always a good addition. I love that. I can't have any around because then, I'll just keep talking and the work won't get done. So what we're going to move on to next is our fresh ginger. Now, a couple of things. Our cook along friends got groceries delivered to them. So they got a few extra ingredients. So they got lots of garlic, which I hope they use in many more recipes. Whether they're on the Osteoporosis website or the Canada Beef website, there's lots of great recipes that incorporate garlic. So I know they'll use that. They did get a lot of extra ginger too. And ginger is fabulous for so many great things, not only in our curry, but in other stir fries and soups and salads. I love it with boiling water to make a beautiful ginger tea. So there's lots of reason to have extra ginger around. Now, when you buy your ginger, it's going to be nice and firm and smooth, and it should be fairly heavy. If it looks kind of wrinkly and dried out, it's been around for a little while. So we really do want the freshest ginger possible so that we get the best flavor. So I'm just going to break off a chunk of this ginger. And by the way, you can do that at the grocery store too. Okay, so just take off kind of what you need and that's all you have to do. So we only need, I think it's a tablespoon. I'm going to make sure. Yeah, we just need a tablespoon of minced ginger root. So you can peel it with a knife, you can peel it with a spoon, whatever you feel comfortable with. You could use a vegetable peeler. And if the skin is a little bit fresh and kind of almost see-through, you could just scrub it and chop it with the skin on. So there's lots of options for you here. I'm just going to kind of give this a little trim of the skin here. And you can actually, after you've washed your ginger root and you peel it or cut the skin off as I'm doing, you can actually keep this lovely skin and steep this with water for that ginger tea. or you can make a lovely broth, a ginger broth, that is beautiful. And then you can just strain this out because this still has a ton of flavor. You could also throw this all in the freezer and then use it later and make a beautiful stock with it. So usually to get about a tablespoon of ginger, you need about, I'd say an inch of fresh ginger. So what I'm gonna do is cut this in slices. So nice thin slices. And then you can stack those slices to make strips. Okay, so there's my little strips. And then that same process we did with the garlic is what you're gonna do with that ginger and do a nice mince. Now, again, if mincing is troublesome for you, you could put this in a little food chopper with the garlic if you wanted to chop it up. You could also use that rasp or grater again to get a nice fine. It ends up being more like a puree of ginger, so it can be a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
Okay? So whatever you're more comfortable with is the way to go. Okay. There. So I'm just gonna do these last few bits, and I think that'll be about a tablespoon. And I'm just gonna make it a bit finer and go over it with my knife. Okay. Now, if you have a little extra ginger chopped, you can totally add this into the curry. It'll be absolutely delicious. Okay. And I'm just gonna add this to my mise en place plate as well, where my garlic is. So I'm gonna get that off my plate and set it aside there. And then we're gonna chop our tomato. Okay. Now I know you guys got really big tomatoes. My tomato's not that large, but that's okay. It just adds a little bit more richness and flavor and a little bit more sauciness to our curry, which is great if we're gonna have either rice or naan with it tonight. So lots of dippable deliciousness. So tomatoes, we don't have to seed them. We don't have to do anything like that. If you want to make this, you don't happen to have fresh tomatoes one night, you can use diced canned tomatoes or plum tomatoes from a can. You basically need about anywhere from half to 3/4 of a cup of tomato, okay? In our case, some of the tomatoes are going to be closer to a cup, and that's okay too. So if you have a sharp enough knife, you can just use your knife to cut through the tomato, okay? If your knife is not so sharp, you might want to use a serrated knife, okay? And that will kind of not squish the tomato as much, but because we don't want to lose that juice, that flavor, okay? And I'm just kind of stacking it again and then cutting it into little squares. Stack these two here. And depending on the tomato that you use, you may have kind of extra juiciness, you might have extra seeds, but it all gets cooked in together and will be delicious. There, so there's my tomato. I'm just gonna put that onto my prep plate here as well, so that I have everything together. All right, so I think we have all our vegetables chopped up. And I'm just gonna wipe up my cutting board here because I have a little bit of tomato juice everywhere. Okay, so how are we doing at home, everybody? Some of you are all chopped and ready to go.
I see lots of thumbs up, Emily.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to move on to our beef. Okay. Because then once our beef is sliced up, we're going to get that seasoning on and start cooking. Okay. So my beef is in the refrigerator. And I'm going to show you your options. Well, there's lots of options, but tonight's options in the recipe is 2, but there's more, don't worry. So I have here beef stir-fry strips or a top sirloin steak. I'm just going to get this plastic off here. All right, so a couple of options, which is great. So if you are grocery shopping, oftentimes you'll see these beautiful stir-fry strips, and they're great for quick weeknight meals, okay? You can pick up a package or two. Sometimes you'll see them discounted, which is fabulous because then you can just go home, save yourself a little bit of money. But if there happens to be top sirloin steaks on sale, then pick up a couple of those because you can still make this dish along with many other dishes. And you can also use other kind of fast fry steaks to make beef stir fry strips. You can slice them thinly and they're good to go. So I just wanted to show you both. So beef stir fry strips, they tend to be these nice long strips of beef, okay? If you don't want them this long, you can cut them in half very easily. Because we have the steaks that we're using tonight, you kind of can control the thickness as well as the length of the steak itself, okay? So I've already cut some ahead of time, but I'm gonna take my steaks here and cut them, because one of the things you wanna look for is kind of like, look for the grain in the beef, okay? So if you kind of run your fingers along the steak, you'll see which way the grain is going. The other way is, you can kind of look at this inside of the steak and say, okay, it looks like it's going up and down this way. So you're gonna cut across it. So what that does is it really helps give you the tender meat, the tender beef that we are looking for in this curry, okay? And because this is kind of a quick stir fry curry, we won't be cooking everything like fully through. Well, we're gonna be cooking it fully through, but we're gonna be cooking it so that we get the benefit of the tenderness of the beef as well, okay? So what we're gonna do is just thinly slice our beef. So just kind of find your grain and then go across it. And in some cases, your pieces will be a little bit longer than mine. Okay, but I'm looking for, I don't know, about 1/4 inch thickness, maybe even thinner if you can. Now, if you find that out of the refrigerator, your beef is not, it's a little too soft for you to slice, because sometimes that can be an issue. What you can do is just pop them in the freezer, even for about 10 or 15 minutes. And that actually firms up the beef a little bit, so that when you go to slice it, it will give you a nice thin slice. The other benefit is having a sharp knife. So I always recommend, if there's a local cookware shop nearby, they usually have knife sharpening days. Bring your knives in and get a good sharpening on that knife so that you can cut through your beef beautifully, okay? So I'm just gonna cut up my other steak here into nice thin pieces. And I'm gonna ask Tracie if there's any questions that have come up so far.
Hi, I'm just checking first on our fellow cooks, and everyone seems to be good. I can see them all cutting their beef, so that's super.
Awesome.
I think we did, in terms of, let's talk a little bit about knife safety, because I think some people think that a sharp knife is actually unsafe, but in actual fact, it's the reverse. But I'm going to have Emily explain that, not me.
Well, as I do that, I'm just going to move my cutting board and wash my
Okay, you do
hands.
that. Yes.
And it is true. A lot of people are like, well, I don't want my knife too sharp because then I'll cut myself. Typically, you'll cut yourself when that knife isn't so sharp, because you're going to be trying to go through whatever it is that you're chopping or slicing, and you'll end up hurting yourself. So having that nice sharp knife will give you that ease of just kind of sliding through everything. And trust me, when you have a sharp knife, cooking does not feel like, an issue. It goes along easier. Granted, if you're not a fan of cooking, sometimes that can also be, a little bit tricky too. So it is really important. And that's why if you do locally, if you have a cookware shop or somewhere that you can trust, or maybe you have a sharpener at home. And by sharpener, I don't mean a honing blade, which is what you see people kind of, wiping their knife back and forth. That helps keep the edge of the knife, but it doesn't actually sharpen it. So once it's sharpened, you can use that to help keep that nice sharp edge to your knife, which is really important. Okay, so do we have all our beef cut, everybody? Are we all good on the beef? No, we have a few people still slicing. That's totally okay. Now, if you happen to have other steaks at home, like let's say you pick up a strip loin or a ribeye and you don't feel like grilling that steak, you can make beef curry with it. So there's lots of options. You could also use, as I said, the fast fry steaks like an eye of round, or the strip loin steaks that I love using for steak sandwiches. They're fast fry steaks. They're really thin. You could slice those up too and use those up for the curry, which is really, really delicious. So just to kind of give you options when you see things on sale, that it's fabulous to use in other recipes. So, have that versatility, which is really, really nice. All right, so we're going to move on to our spices as our cook along friends finish up the beef slicing, and I'm just going to make sure that I have everything here. Oh, I know what I want to do. If you haven't drained your chickpeas, drain your chickpeas. Okay. Now I do want to point out in the recipe it calls for a 14-ounce can of chickpeas, which is the smaller can of chickpeas. If you happen to have a 19-ounce can, that's totally okay. You're going to get about half a cup extra of chickpeas. That just means you're getting a little bit extra protein and extra fiber in the recipe. So you're just going to drain your chickpeas. And for those of you that love using aquafaba, which is the packing liquid in the chickpeas, you can reserve that. You can tuck it in the fridge or freezer and then use it for something else. You can use it for meringues. You can use it to thicken chilies and soups. So it doesn't have to be discarded. Okay. I am going to rinse them though, just to kind of give them a little bit of fresh flavor back. And I like to rinse them until the bubbly packing liquid goes away. Okay. There.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question about the aquafaba.
Yes.
Does it actually have protein in it?
Oh, that's a very good question that I can't answer off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't know if it actually does within it itself.
Right.
I haven't looked into that.
Okay.
But we'll
Thanks.
find out for you.
Yeah.
All right. So my chickpeas are drained and rinsed. Now I think we can get going on our spices. And this is the part where it gets really aromatic. So if you'd like, because we're using whole spices, oftentimes you can toast those whole spices before we get started. And that helps bring out the natural oils as well as just adds a little bit more flavor and fragrance to them. We're not going to toast them tonight because typically you want to toast them, let them cool before you grind them. So we're just going to go right into the grinding process. So the whole spices I find have just a brighter, bigger flavor, which is what we want for this curry. And we're using a mixture of different spices. So I'm going to use, this is a coffee grinder, okay, that I no longer use for coffee beans. I just use it for spices. And you could, if you don't have a coffee grinder, you can use a small food chopper. Sometimes larger food processors have a smaller chopper inside that are perfect for spice grinding. You could also use a mortar and pestle and do a little bit of upper body workout. You could also just put it in some parchment paper or foil and just take a saucepan and knock it till that you break down the spices. So let's say you're having a bad Thursday night. That's what you could do tonight is just pound your spices. I'm going to use the grinder, and these are the whole spices that we're using. So I have some whole cloves, okay, and cloves may make you think of the holidays. So I'm going to add my cloves and green cardamom pods. Now this, if you smell them, rub them against your finger, they'll kind of break that little bit of skin on the outside. This is the aroma that I love, that I think of sweet spices in baking. It's a great substitute for cinnamon if you're using it in baking. Makes lovely tea. So there's lots of great flavor coming from the cardamom. We're also going to add some fennel seeds. I use fennel seeds all the time. They're one of my favorites. If you've ever had fennel in sausage, try using it in other things. Stir frying it and just breaking it up a little bit before you use it adds tons of flavor. And star anise, the star of our of our whole spices. Now this is a little bit of a tricky one. So star anise looks like a star, but it's hard sometimes to find a perfect star. Sometimes they're just broken up. So, and that's okay. Inside the star, much like the cardamom pods, is the actual seed pod. And then that's what kind of brings out the flavor. So star anise has a little bit of that licoricey flavor. And if you're already thinking, you know what, Emily, I don't want to go look for star anise. I don't like licorice. You don't have to use it, okay? I promise you, you'll be missing something, but I don't want you to kind of be worried about that. But we're going to use 1 star anise in our spices, okay? So this is when I have to kind of just scooch over there because my cord isn't long enough to grind up my spices here, okay? So I'm just going to do that. Now, if you have a coffee grinder that you grind coffee in, you could very easily use that and then just wash it after you've done the spices. I use so many whole spices that I just ended up using my coffee grinder for the spices. It was just that easy. And what you're looking for is kind of just to break down these spices. They don't have to be completely ground, but fairly fine. I'll show you what mine looks like. And as soon as you open that top, I'll just put it up here, Roy, so that everyone can see how the mixture looks. Once you take off that top of the spice grinder, the aroma is fabulous. So this is a great start to this curry and the mixture of spices, okay? So this is where I'm gonna look at my recipe so that I don't screw this up. I'm not gonna put my beef in a bowl. I'm just gonna leave it on the plate. So if you have your beef in a bowl, this is where we're gonna start to add our spices. So I'm gonna sprinkle our spice mix on top of here, on top of our beef, okay? Was I supposed to do that, guys? I'm looking at this going, did I write this recipe correctly? I don't think we actually say to do that, but that's what we're going to do. I'm just reading the recipe. See, this is what's important about looking at the recipe. Yes, transfer to a large bowl. Yes, I'm just half a teaspoon of salt. Now, your salt says it's divided. So we're only going to take half a teaspoon of our 3/4 teaspoon of salt and add it to our beef. Okay, just like that. Don't get rid of that other 1/4 teaspoon because we're going to add it later. And then we're going to add, so here's where our grind spices come in. We're going to add some ground cinnamon. If you wanted to, you could break off a piece of cinnamon from a cinnamon stick and use that, but I'm going to use ground cinnamon. And we need half a teaspoon. I'm just finding my half a teaspoon measure. There. Okay, and then we're going to sprinkle that on as well. It is half a teaspoon. No, it's not. See, you guys, I'm testing you. I'm testing you, and I'm testing myself. There we go, 1/4 teaspoon. In we go. So that's going to add a nice little bit of sweetness. And then we're also going to add our 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Okay? And I tend to use fresh ground black pepper. So if you're using pre-ground black pepper, it tends to be a little bit spicier, I find. So you might want to just add a little bit less than the quarter teaspoon. Okay. Now, if you want, you can use tongs to do this. You put gloves on. In my kitchen, my sink is nearby, so I'm just going to make sure that that beef is coated beautifully and evenly with all those spices. And you'll actually see how quickly it absorbs right into the beef. There's not really much left for the plate. It all goes onto the beef and it smells amazing. Okay? My grandmother always told me that if you could smell the spices on the raw meat, you know it's going to taste great cooked. Right? There. So that is coated beautifully. I'm going to give my hands a wash, and guess what? We get to start cooking. So is everyone kind of in the same spot?
I'm
Some
just
of you might
checking
have-
on them, Emily, now, and I see
Perfect.
people mixing the beef and the spices. How's everyone doing? That's okay. I know your hands are in meats. It's okay. You don't need to give me a thumbs up. That's okay. That's great. Yeah, Corinne did though. She was like, "Yeah, it's all good." Okay, super.
Awesome.
I see Benita with the tongs, and Anna, how are you doing?
Does the whole star anise go in? Like,
Yes. It goes in to be ground. So that you grind with your other spices.
okay.
Super. Okay, is everyone okay? We keep going? We're good, okay? Super. Okay, Daphne's like, yes, we are. So is
Okay.
everyone else. Okay, let's get cooking.
All right. So we are gonna start with a little bit of oil in our pan. And so I'm gonna heat up my pan. And we're actually gonna brown the beef a little bit first. So what that does is that kind of sears all the wonderful spices that we put on into the beef. And it starts getting some nice brown golden color on our beef, which is also going to add color to the sauce and in turn flavor, which is beautiful. So we are going to do that part first and then take the beef out and continue cooking. So 1 skillet meals, always a favorite in my house. Okay. So we're going to need a little bit of oil in our pan. So I've just started to heat that, and then we're going to add a little bit of oil to the pan. Now, if you are not, my pan is kind of non-stick. If you are using a not non-stick, you might need a little bit more oil, but you know your pans better than I do. So if you have a great pan that you know nothing sticks to it, then by all means, you'll be okay with just that little bit of oil. So in total, we need just to start off with a tablespoon or 2, because then we're going to add a little bit more oil when we add everything else, okay? So I'm gonna bring my beef closer. I'm also gonna grab some tongs. And in the meantime, do we have any questions from anywhere? Tracie?
Not right now. We're good to keep going.
Well,
Oh,
one question,
sorry,
how hot,
I missed
how hot
that.
do we want the oil?
Sorry.
Ready?
How hot do we want the oil?
So we're cooking at about a medium-high heat. Unless you're using a non-stick, you can cook at a little bit of a higher heat. Okay, so it really, you know, it depends on that heat that's coming through. So if you're on electric or gas or induction, my gas burner takes a little bit to heat through the pan and then also heat up that oil, okay? But kind of, if you can hold your hand over comfortably, that's good. If you can't hold your hand over, it's too hot. Or if there's smoke coming out of your pan, it's just a little too hot. We definitely don't want to do that, okay? So if you have a large enough surface area, you can add all of your beef. If your pan happens to be a little bit smaller, then I would do the beef in batches, because we really want to get a nice good browning happening on the beef, and leaving a little bit of space around it is always helpful, okay? So as you put your beef into your skillet, kind of separate it out a little bit, because it is sliced so thinly, it tends to stick together a little bit. Okay, so we're going to do that. I think my pan's big enough that I can comfortably fit all my beef in there. There we are. Now, if you want, you can switch out your plate and get another one. But because we're going to be putting the beef back in to finish cooking, I'm going to use the same plate when I take it out, okay? Because it won't be completely cooked. So this is where you're going to start to see, and this happens with protein, which I think is fabulous. It's a trigger. You're going to see the browning happening on the edges first, and then you know it's time to turn it so that that golden brown is happening, that color is coming through. So because we took the time to add the seasoning before, it's kind of going to sear as the beef is searing. Those spices are going to sear right into it. And you're going to get those aromas, not just from what we've used, but the fact that we're now searing it and building that flavor together, which is fabulous. Okay. So in about a minute or so, you're going to start to see the beef change and start getting that, picking up that golden brown color on one side. And that's when you can kind of flip it over. And you can do each one individually, or you can just grab a few at a time and flip it over. Okay. There we go. Now, I also put on my rice cooker tonight so that I could have a little bit of rice with this curry. And I find that that's always a great weeknight meal saver, using that rice cooker. All right. So once you get that brown on kind of both sides of those stir fry strips, because that's exactly what we made, we're going to take them out and you're going to reduce the heat of the pan to about medium, okay? Because we have this fairly hot, but because we're going to add our vegetables, we don't want it too hot. I'm going to take out my beef. And don't worry, it's not supposed to be fully cooked right now, okay? We're just browning the beef at this point. And we're going to get it back into the sauce once that sauce comes together, okay? So out that comes. And then this is where we're going to add that last kind of tablespoon of oil to our pan, because now we're going to add our vegetables. So that lovely, beautiful prep plate that we have, our onions are going to go in first. Okay. And then we're also going to add, we're not going to add the tomatoes yet, but we are going to add the garlic. Okay. And then I'm going to put that plate back down. I'm going to grab a spatula and stir this up and start stirring. So this is kind of now where, you know, the taste gets picked up a little bit because we have all of our ingredients ready to go. So what we're looking to do here now is to get a little bit of color and softness into these onions. We just want to keep them stirring, keep stirring them so that they kind of get a nice even color all around. And then what we're going to do while that's kind of here, we're going to bring our other ingredients closer. So the next few things we need to add are those beautiful chickpeas. Okay, so I'm going to bring those closer. We're also going to add that ginger root, so the fresh ginger that we chopped up, that's going to go in. And then we're adding 2 more ground spices. So if you're wondering why we didn't add them earlier, it's because these I find are a little bit more fragrant and softer spices that we want to come through. And actually the one garam masala that we're using has some of the ingredients that we've already added to our beef. So this is just kind of going to double up and give us a little bit more flavor. And another one is the ground coriander. So these are both the ground spices that we're going to add kind of to the next level of flavor in our curries. Okay. All right, so as we're stirring here, it's smelling wonderful. I hope everyone's got a wonderful aroma in their kitchen, which is fabulous. Everyone looks like they're in the heart of stirring and cooking now as I peek at my screen. If you have somebody in the kitchen that's helping you, maybe they're warming up some naan, or cooking some rice, or maybe making a salad for the rest of your meal, or maybe they're pouring you a glass of wine, which is also lovely. Although I have to say that oftentimes when I have curry, a nice cold beer is always something that I love to kind of change the spice level. And on that note, I'm going to just talk about spice because all of our cook along friends got some hot peppers. And you can add a level of heat to this. We're actually going to add some cayenne that will give us a little bit of heat, but you can add a fresh heat to it by using hot peppers. So you could use a Thai chili, you could use a hot chili, the long finger chilies. You could use a habanero if you wanted, a little bit of a kick. But it's not necessary. It's something that you can add for spice and a little bit of heat. But you could also just add some hot sauce if you wanted. So if you had something like sriracha or Tabasco or even sambal olek, any of those kind of hot pepper pastes would be beautiful here too, just to add a kick of flavor and spice. Okay.
Can I ask if you add those things with the spices as we're frying them with the onions, or do we add them afterwards, like the heat things?
The heat things, it depends on how hot you want it.
Yeah.
So if you love it spicy, you could add that hot pepper now.
Okay.
You could also add hot pepper flakes if you have them. But when we add the cayenne, we're only adding a pinch. You could definitely add a little bit more there too.
Okay.
For sure.
But
So
it doesn't need to be fried up the way that the garam masala and the...
No, exactly. It doesn't need to be fried up. It just gives you that kind of fresh hotness. And then the other thing you can do to reduce a little bit of that heat, let's say you want to try it, you could also just take out the seeds of the little hot peppers and the ribs, and that kind of reduces a little bit of that heat as well. Okay. So once you get that nice golden color on your onions, which is what I have, I'm going to start adding my other ingredients. Okay, so I'm going to add my chickpeas. So this is, again, giving us extra protein and fiber. I'm going to add my ginger, that fresh ginger we chopped, and that's going to be a wonderful addition to the curry. And then our ground spices. So the garam masala is going in, and our coriander. And here's also where we're going to add, I'm going to add just a pinch of cayenne. I know my family's heat level, but if you know your family can handle a little bit more heat, you can add a little bit more. I'm just going to add a pinch to it. There we go. And then we're going to just give this a stir. All right. And that's also going to start to cook up those brown spices really nicely. Okay. It smells so great in here. And I actually left the door open a little bit so my neighbors will be able to smell it. They might show up for dinner. All right. So I'm gonna move this out of the way, and here's where we're gonna add evaporated milk. I don't know about you guys, but I love having evaporated milk in my pantry. I'm gonna measure out 1 cup. And if you pour this out and then you look in the can and say, well, Emily, there's only like 3 tablespoons left, you can add the whole can, okay? Don't worry. Again, not gonna make or break it. It works beautifully with a cup, but because your onions might be larger, you have that extra big can, it's not extra big, but a little bit of extra chickpeas, then you can definitely add that. So I'm gonna add my evaporated milk. And just to show you that you can, I am gonna add those last little bits of evaporated milk. And then I'm gonna add, remember that beautiful tomato we chopped up? That's gonna go in here too. And then we saved that 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's gonna go in here as well. And then I want you to get down into that pan with your spatula and give it a good stir, because all those brown bits from the beef, from the vegetables are gonna be down at the bottom, and that evaporated milk is going to pick it all up, just like that. Okay. And then our star protein is going in. That beautiful ground beef. And look at all these beautiful juices. Those have tons of flavor. Get those in there too. We're going to add the whole thing in there. Okay. And we want to give this a good stir. And this is where, make sure that my heat is still on. And this is where we're going to cook the beef through now. Okay. Now, we can't forget our green, and that's our baby spinach that we're going to add. So 2 cups of spinach. If you didn't happen to have spinach one night, but all you had was Swiss chard, or maybe you had some leftover kale that you just want to use up, any of those greens would work beautifully in here. Now, depending on which green, baby spinach is nice and tender and soft, so it will cook fairly quickly. But let's say it's a heartier green, like kale, that might need a little bit more cooking. It's fine, just add it a little bit sooner, okay? I'm gonna add that in there. And then just give it a stir. And we're gonna let that cook down a little bit. This is a nice big full skillet. And I hope it smells amazing at your house, because right now it smells awesome in here. And as you cook, the evaporated milk will give you that kind of rich creaminess. And it was in your pantry, much like all the spices. So that's what makes this kind of fabulous. The sauce is nice and creamy without actually adding cream to it. Okay, just like that. And I'm just gonna let this simmer away. How are we doing? Has everybody got some simmering action happening at their house?
So Emily, I'm just
Yeah.
checking on everyone. And so we've got some people who are cooking with other people like Sandy, and we've got some other folks. We've got some friends over. Benita invited people over to have dinner tonight after.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
She just let us know. That's great. And we've got other people who I can see, Daphne, you know, everyone's enjoying. I hope so. I can see them having a beverage while they do that. I'm sure
I love that.
clean water. That's there we go, Tina. I can see Tina and everyone and Helen and all of them. So that looks so great. We did get a couple of questions. I love one pot meals. So especially if you're cooking on your own and you don't want to make a side dish because you're just cooking for yourself and another person, having everything in one dish, all the foods you want to have, your veg, your protein, you know, your carbs, you know, all of it. It's great. So a couple of questions that we had. If someone has a milk allergy, what could they use instead of the evaporated milk? Could they use like a fortified product like oat milk or almond milk?
So I would actually use something that would be great here is if you can find, it's a cashew almond mixture of a beverage. It's fortified, and what's great about it is it has almost a natural thickness because of the richness of the cashews. So that would be perfect for something like this because it still gives you that creaminess. Things like almond milk will work, but they never really get as thick. So not to bring gluten into this, but if you had to use oat, will give you that creaminess too, oat beverage. But if you had to use something like almond, then for sure you might need to add a little bit of cornstarch or flour. Just whisk it in. You only need about a tablespoon, and that will kind of help create that creaminess and not have it split. The other great thing, if you're a coconut milk fan, this would be beautiful with coconut milk and bring in another element of flavor, which is absolutely delicious. So there's lots of options for you, but do make sure that it's fortified if you can. And then a lot of them have that extra protein in there, which is fabulous too.
Exactly. And so we always want to comment. So when we develop recipes, we're making sure that we're getting enough of the bone building nutrients we discussed at the beginning of the webinar. So it's up to you to make, substitutions, whatever you want to have, whatever you have on hand. But when you take out, so I know Emily was mentioning protein and fiber in chickpeas, but also they have calcium. The calcium in the chickpea is contributing to the total calcium per serving. So if you, let's say, don't have enough, or you like, oh, I don't have any tonight, or I don't want to put them in, that's fine. You're just aware, one meal is not going to determine, how much you're getting all week. It's all about balance and, the other things you're going to consume that day. Same thing with the spinach, as Emily was saying. If you don't have spinach, put in whatever you like. Emily, what about green peas? How do we feel about? We love our frozen, whatever we can
Tracie
freeze.
loves peas.
I love my frozen.
If there is ever a substitute that Tracie wants, it's always frozen peas.
Yep.
So dig in your freezer. Let's say you have frozen spinach in the freezer. You can even use that here because you can break it up and it will simmer in the sauce. Peas and carrot mixture, a diced mixed veg, that would be beautiful in here too. So if you have things that are lurking in your freezer that you want to use, that's a fabulous place to use them. Because they will and you can throw them in frozen, because in that 5 minutes or so, they'll heat through beautifully and they'll taste perfect and fresh and wonderful, which, when you're kind of cooking these meals, like really, this would not have taken us an hour had we not been talking and kind of cooking together. Yes. So the idea is that, you get all that prep work done. And I know kind of, if you think about, we ground the spices and things like that, it actually really does help build flavor, but it doesn't take that long. Obviously, me talking to you this whole time, it takes a little bit longer, but when you're going through the motions, and then as you saw, because we had everything ready, it just came together and it's done. It is literally done.
This is a great recipe, and I'm just checking on everyone else. Let me just do a quick gallery. I see people Sarah's stirring. Joan, she's got her stuff going. Hi, everyone. Yep, you're all good. That looks all good. And I think Susan's decided to put all the spinach into.
Oh, for sure.
I saw her with the whole bag.
I wanted to say, because as we all know, spinach, goes from this much to this much. Yes. Feel free to add more spinach if you'd like. If you're going to have leftover spinach, and if you don't know what to do with it, you could freeze it and use it later. It's great in salads and soups. If you want to plan for tomorrow, you could add more spinach to this and heat it up with more spinach if you'd like. So don't worry, the spinach will get used regardless.
Exactly. And you know what? Are you ready to plate? Because I've got, no, you made rice. I know everyone got naan. Either one is great because you want to have something to sop up all that delicious sauce with. And while Emily is plating, so Elizabeth is asking, actually, Emily, she's still not sure about the hot pepper that she got. What would you suggest? She got a lot of chili peppers.
So most of our cook-along friends got a large package of hot peppers. So here's what I'm going to recommend. You'll notice that I didn't use any because I don't have any. And what I would do is taste the curry right now. And if you want a little bit of heat, just take a slice off, just a tiny little slice off that hot pepper and add it to a spoonful. Eat it. If you enjoy it and you can handle it, slice up a little bit more. Because it's just a heat level thing. So it's optional. It's not a make or break ingredient. However, you all now have a package of hot peppers that you might not know what to do with. So here's what I'm going to tell you what to do with it. You could obviously make the curry and enjoy it with the hot peppers, or any other recipe that calls for hot peppers, you can use it. You could also wash them, pat them dry, put them in a container or a zip top bag and freeze them, and take out 1 pepper next time you have a recipe that calls for a hot pepper. The other thing you can do is, and for all of our friends that are cooking along with us tonight, and anybody else who wants one, I have a great recipe for pickled hot peppers that you can keep in a jar in the refrigerator, and then use it as a hot pepper sauce to your favorite stir fry, soups, when you make pasta. It's a favorite ingredient so that you can use up those hot peppers. And trust me, all those peppers, once they're sliced, you will need to wear gloves if you're slicing that many. They go down to about 2 little jars that you can keep in your fridge. So hopefully that will help in the planning of the hot peppers.
And I am just going to make a little note on that. Even if you're just cutting the 1 pepper tonight and you don't have gloves on, please be careful. Don't rub your eyes, because as someone who's done it, once you pick up that hot pepper, it's on your fingers and it can be a little painful. So,
and don't change any diapers.
and I didn't do that. Oh, Emily. Okay. So there we go. I want to talk a little bit while everyone's just finishing up, and then we're going to do the taste test that we always do. We're going to give the apron away. So some people, you know, we've got some comments like, oh my God, this is so great. And then you buy that package of star anise and you buy that package of garam masala, and you're not used to using all of these spices. So you can store them. How long, I mean, will these spices last? And like Emily said, you can use these for a variety of other, you know, recipes. You can make this again whenever you want to have it completely. But what's the best way to store spices? Because the longer you keep them, does everyone have that one spice jar in their spice cabinet that they've had since they moved in to wherever they're living? Who's got it? And who's tried it? And then
I see nodding happening.
Like
I see waving happening.
I'm just
okay. I will tell you right now, if it's from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, you need to get rid of those spices. For sure. For sure.
Yes.
So I have a few examples of jars, and this is just something that if you happen to have them around. So this is just a jam jar. This is where I keep my ground cinnamon. Okay. This is my cayenne in a flip top jar. And here's my star anise that is like less than half now, my jar of star anise. So as long as it's in something that's sealed, because these are aromatics, right? The cardamom that we used, all the cloves, the star anise, as soon as you open that bag, there was aroma. And you want to keep that in there. So having something with a nice sealed lid, don't just leave them in the baggies, because they just will lose that aroma and flavor. So keep them in something sealed and away from heat and sun. So if you have a cupboard that you keep your spices in, or a shelf that's kind of out of the way, that's the best place to keep them. And they will keep for a long time because they're sealed. And do try to use them. Star anise, by the way, is fabulous if you're just mulling some apple cider. You want to throw a couple of star anise in there, or even for your tea. And then you can just remove them, because it just adds a nice little bit of flavor to it. You could also, let's say you made something a little stinky and the house is a little stinky. You could put a beautiful pot of star anise, cloves, some fresh ginger in a pot of water, and it'll fill the kitchen with a beautiful aroma. And then guess what? You can drink that water because it's just a beautiful spiced water. You've just made a lovely tea. So there are ways to use it, and you will, once you have it, you kind of realize that, oh, this is kind of not bad. There could be the opposite, where you're like, I don't think I want to use this again. And that's okay too. But you could make this into little sachets, and, you know, holidays, birthdays, make a little sachet of spices and share it with your friends. And then they can make their fancy little teas, or a little bit of potpourri in some water to, you know, add some lovely aroma to their kitchen too. So share the wealth.
There we go. No, that's great. And you know what? We had a couple of people like Clara. She mentioned that she uses like the star anise in compotes, fruit compotes, even cranberry sauce. A lot of these are baking spices even. So, you know, please use whatever you get. We're always trying to maximize the ingredients that we have so that we're not wasting anything, but still making really good food. And I know that we're almost out of time. We're just going to check everyone. How is everyone doing? Let's see. I see mixing. I see Sarah with thumbs. Everyone. Oh, we've got thumbs up. That's great. Oh, Jacqueline put fireworks behind her. So
Oh, I
that's
love it.
super. Oh, and Joan and Daphna's got jazz hands. So that's super. That's wonderful. You know what? We had such a good group tonight, Emily, like
It was
cooking with us, and
fabulous.
all of you who are watching, you know, so wonderful. We are going to do, Roy, let's get an overhead shot of that delicious curry with the naan bread. Let's take a look at that. And Emily, you do the honors, please. You
I
need to
will.
give us that lovely taste test.
So I'm not gonna lie, I do love carbs, hence the rice on the bottom and the naan on the side. So, but again, you don't have to have both. You can use the naan and just kind of scoop some up like this to have a nice little bite, or just eat it with a spoon. I'm gonna do a little bit of both. I'm gonna start this way.
That does look delicious, especially for all of us like who aren't cooking along with you. So I hope everyone, if you're tasting and enjoying, and while Emily is doing that, so we want to give away that apron. I'm just pulling up a name right now. All right, so let me just see here. We would like to congratulate Margot McWilliams from Trenton, Ontario. So congratulations. You can put me on. Yeah. Congratulations to Margot. We're gonna mail you the apron, and thank you for watching with us. So all of our cook along friends, we want to thank you. I'm just gonna share my screen really quickly here. There we go. And so if you like this recipe, and who wouldn't, we've got so many more on the website, at the Osteoporosis Canada website. We've got a wonderful beef carne asada sandwich, a roasted veggie cobbler, a roasted tomato and creamy kale pesto pasta. We actually just did that cooking demo 2 weeks ago, and a green eggs and ham bagel recipe. So good. Check out all our other recipes, but we have also other resources that we want you to use so that you can optimize your bone health, manage your osteoporosis if you do have osteoporosis, so we can prevent fractures. You can calculate your calcium at the website. We have a podcast. These are all free resources. You can check out Unbreakable, the OC podcast on iTunes, Spotify, on Google Play. And if you don't have any of those, you can just press play on the website and listen to it. We've also got a blog, and we have recorded this webinar like we record all our webinars. So if you want to rewatch it, or let's say you jumped on late, or if you know someone who missed it and they want to watch it, just visit the OC replay webpage and you can watch this and all our other webinars. And lastly, we want to thank our partners, because without our partners, we could not do fabulous programming and outreach like this. So thank you to Thinkbeef.ca. We also want to thank Voila Grocery Delivery, who got all our cook along participants their groceries this week. And of course, Emily, who is a good friend to Osteoporosis Canada, did another fabulous job. We want to thank Emily, and we want to thank you for joining us today. Subscribe to our newsletter. That way you get information and updates right to your inbox. If you're on Instagram and Facebook, many of you found us there. You know, we have information there as well. So happy cooking all. Enjoy your dinner. To the cook along participants, this is the final cook along cooking demo in our series. We are working on new content, so stay tuned, because there will be new stuff coming along in the spring. Take care, everyone. Bye, Emily. Bye, cook along
Bye,
participants.
Tracie.
Bye,
Thanks so
cooking
much,
demo
everybody.
friends.
Enjoy
Have a
your
good one.
curry tonight. Bye-bye.
Bye.